What's going on, guys? Eric here and welcome to the channel. In this video I'll show you how to put a really unique vinyl wrap camo pattern on the hood of your car. We'll be using VVivid's new large pattern black stealth camo wrap. We'll start by going over the tools and supplies that you'll need to do the project. I'll then show you the walkthrough of how to apply the vinyl to the hood of your car. And after the walkthrough, we'll talk about how long the project took to do, about how much it might cost you to do it if you did this for yourself, and we'll talk about how much you might be able to charge customers or clients if they ask you to wrap the hoods of their cars. Alright guys, so before we get started on wrapping the hood, let's take a look at some of the tools and materials you're going to need to do this particular project. So you can see laid out in front of me, I've got my heat gun here, which will be the heat source. You can also use a torch if you're comfortable with that. I've got a wrap glove, which will help your hand smooth over vinyl a little bit more easily than just without a glove on. I've got two different knives here. This is just a NT cutter body, and then this is a alpha body. Both of them have just snap off utility blades in them. I've got two different squeegees here. This is just a soft one that bends more easily. This one is a harder one, more firm. It also has magnets in it. It's got buffers on both ends of it, and then on each of the other sides I have Teflon tape on there to help the hard edge slide over more easily. And then over here I have just my toolkit that I use to carry my tools with me, with other items in it that are helpful to have on hand. Tape measure for measuring and cutting, a blade breaker box here, and just a variety of other tools like pokers, pens and pencils for marking, etc., etc. I also have a couple different magnets, as you can see right now, holding the vinyl in place. And of course, you'll want to have your vinyl, which, as you can see here, I have a sheet already cut out, big enough to cover the entire hood, with a little bit of excess across the tops and the bottoms and the sides and both sides. So with that, we can get started with the project. So you see that I've got already a piece cut out big enough to cover the entire hood, left and right, front and back, and I just created a center hinge with my magnets, as you saw there, and folded over to half. I'm using my back slitter knife to cut the backing paper, which I can then peel off from behind or underneath of the vinyl itself while it's laying down. And this is advantageous in that you can essentially do half the hood at one time if you're doing this solo. So you can see that I just peeled off the backing paper on that half of the hood, and I'm working my way towards the first recess in the side of the hood on the passenger side there. You can kind of see the line already defined that I'm working my way towards that recess. Working my way down towards the front side of the hood, I was working on the back upper side, then working my way down into that recess. You can see that I basically fed the vinyl down into the recess and using my thumb to make sure that it's pressed, the vinyl is pressed in there nice and tightly. As I get towards the bottom or the front there, I'm using a little bit of heat to soften the vinyl because that's where multiple points and curves all converge together. So I wanted to heat up the vinyl just a little bit to make it a little bit more manageable in doing those multiple compound curved areas. Once I made it past that point, you can see that I'm just finishing off the rest of the vinyl. Once I made it on the other side of that recess onto the flatter side and finished off the vinyl to the fender. Now I'm just peeling off the rest of the backing paper on the other side, as you see there, glassing it out, trying to get it as smooth as I can. You can see I have some wrinkles going down the front there, but that's okay. I have it angled almost horizontally across the hood, and that's fine because what I can do later to fix that is just pull straight down towards the bottom of the screen or towards the front of the car, and those will essentially go away. So basically now I'm just feeding the vinyl down towards the front and towards the driver's side there. I'm lifting up, adding tension as needed, popping it up to help me work those wrinkles. As I work down over the front side there, you can see that I'm basically towards the middle, and I'm just giving a little bit of heat to kind of warm things up and make it a little bit easier to work with, working down towards the front edge of that hood. On the far side there, towards the driver's side, you can see I've reached the other recess, and I'm basically lifting the vinyl, as you can see on the far right, so that I can then feed the vinyl down into the recess instead of stretching it in. And I'm working my way up and down that recess, in this case, up all the way. Once I finish that, I'm tackling the front side here. I'm at that very edge of the hood where it meets basically a grill trim. And I've got that all down and laid nice and cleanly. And so now you can see I'm on the side where I had made it to the fender and just heating things up to kind of get things relaxed and smooth down. On the back side by the windshield, I'm trimming off some of the excess vinyl that's caught up on the windshield, binding on the hood. On the other side here, the driver's side, I'm kind of heating my bridge that I've crossed over the fender onto the hood and getting rid of some of the excess vinyl towards the top by the windshield. Once I've done that, you can see I'm going to get rid of a little bit of excess over the headlights so it's not grabbing so much there as well. And on the back of the hood, you can see I'm just basically heating it, use my glove to roll it over the edge, and now I'm going to cut off the excess, having the back of the, or side of the blade against the upper inside of the hood back there. Doing that on one side, now I'm on the passenger side doing the same thing. Now I've lifted the hood since I'm getting ready to trim out all the sides and the edges, and you can see I'm using just a little bit of heat right now to soften the edges and rolling it around just to make sure I got good roll coverage over it. I'm going to get a little bit closer in to show you how I'm going to wrap over this corner here with a little bit of heat and a little bit of stretching and pulling. So you can see I'm heating the area around the corner. I'm going to give it just a little bit of a tug and pull over that corner right there, and then I'm going to pull out and away, and then smooth out the vinyl. Basically, I want to wrap over the corner, make it smooth and nice, and then all the excess vinyl, pull it away towards the flat sides left and right of that corner, giving it a little bit of heat to shrink it back up. So now that the vinyl wraps around the corner, wait a few seconds or a second or two, let it cool, and then you can mold the rest of it around the corner, and that corner will be fully wrapped nicely and look like paint. Do that for the rest of the hood. Basically, I'm giving a little bit of heat. There's another corner there doing the same process, and then I'm just heating so that the vinyl basically falls over the edge of the hood, and then I can roll it and smooth it over the edge nicely with my finger, and get good coverage over the edges there. And again, addressing each of those corners in the closer up video that is showed about a minute ago. Once I have all that done, I'm ready to cut. And so what I do when I cut is I will cut directly underneath of a corner and head towards one side, and then cut directly underneath of the corner again and head towards another side. As you can see there, on that corner, I cut directly underneath and went towards the back of the car, towards the windshield. In that corner up there, I'm headed towards the other side, cutting under the corner and away. So basically do that for each of those corners. At least that's how I do it. Now I'm basically trimming off all the other side edges. Again, I took a little bit of time to heat and roll the vinyl over the edge so I have nice, good, smooth, clean coverage over those edges. Once I've done that on the sides, I brought the hood back down. You can see I've trimming out that front end that kind of goes over the hood grill trim piece. And then on the back corners where the top edges meet the windshield area, basically it's kind of do the same process there where I stretch the vinyl over the corner, tack it in. Now that I've trimmed everything out, I'm heating things up, and I am basically using my wrap glove to make sure everything is smoothed down nice and tightly. I'm addressing the corners, that particular corner on the top side there, giving everything some heat, making sure nothing's going to pop up, making sure everything's tucked in nice and tightly so that everything looks good and clean and professional. So I'm going over the hood with some heat, and this hood is fully wrapped. So as you can see, I had two deep recesses that I had to feed into. The center of the hood was pretty flat. Once I got past the other side of the recess, that was pretty flat as well. And so pretty simple, easy hood. Just have to consider feeding in the vinyl into those recesses. This vinyl is a little bit stiffer, so I want to do that versus stretching and bridging in. But this is the final product of the wrapped hood. Okay, so now that the walkthrough portion is done, let's talk about how long this project took to do. All in all, for the actual vinyl application itself, it took about 45 minutes to do. This is before cleaning and prep, which takes about maybe 5-10 minutes for cleaning, sanding any edges if there's any loose paint or things like that, and preparing the surface so that the vinyl will stick as best as it can to the hood of the car. Now, 45 minutes may be a little bit kind of long, maybe a little bit short, depending on where you are in your skill level. This one was fairly easy. It was mostly flat, as you saw in the center and on the sides, but in this case it did have two deep recesses or channels on the hood of the car that I then had to kind of just feed in, then feed back out of those channels, which added just a little bit of time to the application process itself. Nothing too crazy, nothing too difficult, but stuff like that when you have recesses or bumps or protrusions like hood scoops and things like that, or vents, they do tend to add a little bit more time to a standard install if you have a hood that's pretty flat with no bumps or recesses that you have to work around or in or over. Okay, so now let's talk about the cost of the project if you were to do this for yourself. Now we're talking right now just the material costs, which for this particular project, I used a 5 foot by 5 foot square to ensure that I had full and adequate coverage of the entire hood, also accounting for some of the vinyl surface area that those recesses would take in as well, which does increase the overall size of the amount of piece that you would use relative to or compared to a flat hood that has no bumps or recesses in it. Now, a 5x5 sheet of vinyl of this particular camouflage pattern costs around $50, and I'll have links in the description for you to get the vinyl if you wanted to do this project yourself. But this also doesn't include any costs for other things that you might have used, such as your cleaning materials and things like that. So the $50 more or less really just covers the material cost itself. Okay guys, so now that I've shown you the walkthrough of the video on how to apply the graphic to the hood of your car, we've talked about how much this would cost and how long it would take you to do it. Let's talk about how much you might be able to charge a customer or a client if they ask you to wrap the hood of their car. So we already know that it's going to take around 45 minutes for the install, maybe more, maybe less, depending on your skill level, and also maybe 10 to 15 minutes for some simple cleaning and preparation. Add a little bit more time for that if you have things that you have to remove, such as windshield wiper sprayers, hoods or vents, etc., etc. So roughly, let's go with about an hour's worth of time for cleaning and prep, as well as the actual install time itself. So we know that the cost of the material is about $50 for a 5x5 foot sheet of vinyl, and the price of that will vary, but for the purposes of this video, it's around $50 for a piece of vinyl that would adequately cover the hood of a normal sized car. Anything bigger will probably obviously need more vinyl. Something smaller, you could probably get away with something smaller. Using an hour's worth of labor, so now you know two factors that will help gauge how much you might be able to charge. And so those are the two things that you kind of have to think about, and then consider other factors that might play into this as far as charging a customer or client. So you want to cover your $50 material cost automatically. So you got $50 there. Now you could charge a flat rate on top of that, so material plus flat rate. So what is it, that flat rate, that your market might be able to bear or would be reasonable? So is it going to be another $100 on top of that, or is it going to be $200 as a flat rate plus material? So if it's $200 plus material, we're talking about $250 is what you might charge a client. If you are going to go by an hourly rate, this is where you would have to consider how much your time is worth and how long it would actually take you to do. Not just the install itself, but also the cleaning and prepping, disassembly of items such as hood scoops, vents, things like that, and then also the reassembly on that side. So if it's only going to be an hour, and then you can decide, you know that off the bat that you can just think about your flat rate of being, let's say, $100 an hour. So if that's the case, then it's going to be $50 for the material and $100 for an hour's worth of work, so $150. Now, if you're doing this as just, kind of on the side, and you're doing it out of your house in your garage, you don't have factors such as rent or utilities to add into that cost per se, because you're already paying for that regardless, given that you're living in your residence. Now, if you were a business and had a brick and mortar shop, then you have other factors to consider, like the rent and the mortgage and the utilities, such as power and water, your shop supplies, things like that, that you'll have to account for when you either add to an hourly rate to the material cost, or if you go with a flat rate. Now, just from my personal experience, so please take that as that's all it is, other wrap shops that I have seen for a basic hood wrap, nothing too crazy with a lot of hood scoops and vents and things like that, around $300 to $350 is my experience from what I've seen. More or less, some shops may only charge $200, some can charge as high as $500 or more. There are different factors that have to be considered: the quality and reputation of the shop, the area that they're in, the vinyl that's been chosen. If you go with a chrome vinyl, of course, not only is the material going to be more expensive, but the labor is going to be much more expensive, because chrome is a very difficult vinyl to use. If it's just a basic, let's say, gloss black in Avery SW900 wrap cast, which is exceptionally easy to use, labor rate may be lower, because it would probably only take 20 minutes to do a hood like in the video. Regardless, you want to make sure that you cover the cost of your materials and cover the labor rate, or what your time is worth, whether you charge an hourly rate or if you just charge a flat rate on top of that. Alright guys, so I hope you found this video to be helpful, informative, instructive, and maybe entertaining in some way, shape, or form. Hopefully it's given you maybe a little bit of confidence in wrapping your hood if it's something that you've wanted to do but just haven't gotten around to doing it. Maybe you've tried it before and failed, and hopefully I've shown you some techniques or methods that may help you succeed in wrapping the hood of your car. Hopefully maybe it was just for pure entertainment value. Regardless, thank you guys for watching. If you did like this video, hit that like button by giving it a thumbs up. But also, if you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing as well by clicking that subscribe button and then hitting the bell notification button so you get notices whenever I post new content to the channel. Thanks again, guys, for watching. Have a great day.